Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Better Podcast, where we break down the ideas, strategies, and real world decisions behind thoughtful real estate investing in the Triangle. If you've been following along with our summer case study series, you know we've been pulling back the curtain on real better projects and walking through the thinking behind them. In our first episode, we looked at the Chamberlain, our first rehab and build to sell flag lot subdivision. Our second, we covered Howard Street, where we explored our build to rent and small lot strategy. And last week, we discussed Cherry Grove, which was all about opportunity. The goal of this series is simple: to show you not just what we build, but how we think about opportunities, evaluate risk, and make decisions before a project ever gets off the ground. So today, we're continuing the series with another project that offers a different set of challenges, opportunities, and lessons. Today, we're going to put a spotlight on our Markham Moderns project. And one phrase that comes to mind with this project is relationships. So why don't we jump right in, and Devin, give us a little bit about how we found the project and what it is.
Yeah, so this deal actually was raised to our attention from a lender relationship that we had on somebody who wanted to give us money. And they ran across it and they're like, we don't know exactly how you run your strategy. However, would this thing work? And just sent it over. And it was a church that was on the market on Crexy where they needed to move. Their space wasn't efficient for their situation. They had 2 parking spots, which, as you can imagine, as a church, like 2 parking spaces, not enough. And so they were specifically looking for an infill residential developer to sell their church to. And it was raised to our attention through that. And from there, we were like, okay, cool. Yeah, maybe this does work for us. And that's how we ran across it. Anybody could have actually seen this deal. You'd obviously need the skill set of a residential infill developer to execute properly. But we saw it, saw the zoning, knew we could execute these small lot houses that Durham allows, and pursued it at that point.
Yeah. I mean, it's worth openly stating that we find our deals from a variety of sources, right? Generally speaking, we find them on Zillow, and we have wholesaler relationships. There's many ways we find our deals, but looking on commercial websites, looking at commercial properties that we could then turn into residential sites, that's not out of the realm of possibility, but it's not typically in our workflow. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they're certainly there. They're posted. A good agent will post on multiple outlets if they're properly advertising a property. This might be a little bit small scale compared to what's usually on a site like Crexy, but it was there. Sometimes you see 1 acre sites, things like that are on Crexy. And yeah, this certainly fit our bill. We were actually looking at a similar project in a neighborhood north of this that was asking a higher price for a similar project with lower ARVs. And we were considering that one. So when this popped in, we were like, let's try to move quickly. And even paying over ask here, it was substantially less than when we were looking at for the other lot in Northgate Park, and made both the church happy and us happy.
Yeah. So, I mean, we went out there, we took a look at it, and we were pleasantly surprised by a few things that we saw. What were some of the initial things that jumped right out at us when we were on site?
Yeah. So one, the neighborhood, premium neighborhood, proximity to downtown. You can walk to downtown. That there's only so much land that you can have to walk to downtown. Additionally, there are a few neighborhoods where you can just look at the actual comps and, hey, they're literally small lot houses, 1,200 square foot houses that are starting at 550, going all the way up into the 600s. And so when you see something like that, we have comps, which decreases appraisal risk, and also not just appraisal risk, but in a build for sale situation, knowledge that we are going to be able to offload this property. So you show up, you see comps, you recognize, hey, this is downtown, this is a premium neighborhood. And also with some of these new styles, the topography can actually be an advantage in situations where previously people would be like, no, I don't like this topography. But we saw this and saw it as a way to basically create additional parking underneath a house, which was allowed after SCAD.
Yeah. So our 3 biggest things, right, was this flight to quality, right? We saw that premium neighborhoods, even in times of uncertainty, we've recently given a bunch of presentations on developing in uncertain times, we see a flight to quality. The best neighborhoods don't deteriorate. And so we knew that this was a way for us to cap our risk. On the second point, we had local comparables, right? There was plenty of people who had done new builds in the Duke Park area. There weren't dozens and dozens of them, but there were certainly enough that aligned with what we were building, that were similar in terms of their quality and their size, that it made sense for us to refer to those to underwrite the deal. And then again, that below grade space, right? So saying we're not 100% sure what we can put here, but we know that we have opportunities, right? And that was especially useful because we were on a busy road.
Yeah, it was critical in creating the site plan and understanding how this should be done. That was what got us to 3 lots instead of 2 lots, because people have cars still. There's a bike lane, things like that. And yeah, we were able to appropriately create a design here that also didn't keep us on ticky-tacky little 2,000 square foot lots.
Yeah. I mean, the below grade thing, just going back to that for a second, is super interesting, right? Because there's, if you could take land that is fit or zoned for 1,200 square feet max, and you can find a way to get 1,400, 1,600, you can get that extra square footage on those lots. There's huge upside, right? The part that comes with that is there's a little bit of risk in terms of dealing with the city. Generally, we do these by right development deals where it's like bang, 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 right? We know, we see it, we know we can split it up. We're not really doing anything crazy, but this is something that we knew was possible, but hadn't been really, really thoroughly explored in the way that we were thinking, like, let's just get this done. But on the other hand, there was a ton of upside, right?
Yeah, and so that's increased risk. So you just want to balance that out with decreased risk somewhere else in the project. And we had that based on having, 6 comps that we could refer to, basically, instead of your standard 3, things like that. And in addition to that, even after we bought the parcel, there were 3 more comps that rolled in, all north of 600 on standard 1,200 square foot houses without off-street parking. So, we were de-risked elsewhere, even with that increased risk that ultimately has cost us a little bit on timeline, as like, even for the city, these sorts of calculations on below grade are new for them. And, fortunately, you go back to premium neighborhoods don't shift as much in value. They just are good. And so even with interest rate movements going against us, comps that have rolled in, things of that, haven't really substantially gone down. People are just less interest rate sensitive in premium neighborhoods.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's worth mentioning that we're, hoping to begin the construction phase of this project soon. It's not something that we've developed, built, sold, and now we're looking 2 years in the past to sort of do a postmortem on what happened here. Like, we're still in the thick of things, but because of the comps that you mentioned, we've taken a little bit longer on the timeline for sure, but having gotten this extra square footage approved on a bunch of these houses, we feel really confident that based on our original underwrite, we're going to outperform anyway. So it's still going to be a net positive getting this extra square footage.
Yeah, and you just kind of have to hope next spring, summer, those comps still hold through, which we were confident in because it's Duke Park.
So we got past this deal by one of our good lender friends, someone who really wanted to work with us and has worked with us before and since. And then we went out there, we checked out the site, and we saw these 3 things and said, okay, this is a good deal. Like, we're pretty sure these are the 3 cornerstones to why we're going to do it. But let's dive a little bit further into what the development strategy was. Once we had the offer, it was accepted. And after some back and forth, because we're working with a nonprofit organization that had nothing to do with us, we ended up closing on it. Now, what are we looking at?
Yeah, we need to really, really confirm the below grade, how we're going to do that, make sure our off-street parking is there, because we could still, even at that price, we paid $280 for this. Like, building 2 standard homes was an option that we could have done here instead of 3 smaller homes. It all fit there. But we really wanted to make sure that the site plan and the design was keyed in. These small details can make a big difference. And also, one thing that we knew this before we closed is we were going to have some flexibility on our infill standards, because there were no infill, at least in terms of our street yards, there were no comps for it. So we're able to use base infill. We have some height issues, but we're able to tackle those. And then, really just making sure, like, okay, if we have about 9,000 square feet, what does that mean? That means we're not limited to just a 2,000 square foot lot. And that also, in terms of our architectural design, gives us some flexibility to not have just a standard rectangular box that we're building that won't appraise well or sell well. Just like looking through the comps, we noticed that, generally speaking, having a little pop, not just inside, but outside, and being able to site plan and have a nice outdoor space is critical on getting a premium price when you go to sell. And we were able to create lots that have that ability: a big deck, a screened in portion, and an outdoor portion. Things of that nature.
Yeah, I actually think we talked about this a little bit in our Chamberlain case study, where we're just going to harp on this over and over again, where just because you can fit it doesn't mean you should fit it, right? So there's plenty of developers out there who are shoving these little 2,000 square foot lots in, jigsaw puzzling them together, and then getting these 15-foot wide, 1,200 square foot houses. And I think people just don't want to live in those, right? So when you take a look at the neighborhoods that exist in Durham, you have to really, really understand. On the next episode, we'll talk a little bit about Trinity Park and the character of that neighborhood, which is very different than the character of the Duke Park neighborhood. But like Devin said, modern designed, ample outdoor space, like screened in and non-screened in portions of porches, like that fits in this neighborhood. We've seen it fit in this neighborhood. We've looked at comps and we know people like that, both in the Duke Park neighborhood and in similar neighborhoods across Durham. We've seen it fit in those types of neighborhoods. So we knew exactly what we needed to build there. And although we could have built 4 houses potentially if we found a way to squeeze this in and move some things here and there, 3 seemed like the right.
Yeah, we definitely could fit 4. It's just, what are you going to, it's not worth the risk. That's risk-adjusted return, not worth it.
Yeah. So that combined with the below grade stuff, of course, like the ability to come close to the street because there were no houses on the Washington side of the street, allowed us to come closer to the street. All of that was really what made us go with the plan that we wanted to. One thing that's super interesting is that we're on a corner here and one side of the lot is a little bit longer than the other side. It's like twice the length. So we did have 2 houses facing one way and 1 house facing the other way. That gives us not necessarily like all houses in a row. There's a little bit of variety, a little bit of spice to it. And I think people like that as well.
Yeah. And there actually even is a natural angle to the lot slightly that will offset these houses even more. And they'll just look sort of randomly placed, which it sounds, when you say randomly placed, like not ideal, but you actually want that rather than in a straight line.
Yeah. I think people like diversity in these types of things. It's just talking about financials a little bit. Let's talk about the underwrite, because I remember back when we were putting out this offer, we were like, should we offer 275? How do we feel about 280? Are we willing to go up to 290? And we were kind of like really going back and forth, like, what do we think? And it was like every dollar is valuable. And now we kind of take a look back at it and we were like, what were we thinking? Like this was a home run of a deal, right? So what was our start for the underwrite and where do we end up?
Yeah, we initially were like 550. Let's be conservative because that is the lowest
for the ARV of the houses.
Yes, and that was the lowest comp in Duke Park for a 1,200 square foot house, which, we talk about like you can't be conservative on every point because that house in particular was a pre-sale before it was done, locked in. That's the lowest somebody's willing to pay for a 1,200 square foot house in that neighborhood. And so we were really conservative from the start. And like I mentioned earlier in this discussion, it's crazy that we were thinking that because we were talking about 115 per lot in Northgate Park. And Northgate Park is at a slight deficit. You're probably more at like a 530, 525 for a 1,200 square foot house when you're underwriting in Northgate Park. So here you're at a 550 minimum with 625 upside. And that's what we were thinking as we're going in. And you don't want to take that qualitative of hey, this is a 625 upside, but it's something you should have in the back of your mind when you're quabbling between 280 and 290. And honestly, once we went from 275 to 280, it got it done anyway. So we didn't have to go up to 290. But when you factor all of that in, the fact that there's a meter there already that we can tap into, things like that, it ended up being a home run, like you're mentioning, confirming that while we were under contract, we confirmed the below grade, which really made us feel like when you look at the comp on Carroll Street that has below grade parking, a few other of these designs, some of these houses that have these extra pops that make it not just a standard 1,200 square foot house, those are the houses that are getting $600,000. And we really confirmed, hey, $600,000 is probably the minimum actually here, not 550 for what we're going to get at the end of the day.
And that obviously came a little bit later in the process, right? Like that was post offer, but I want to really quickly just walk through how we do this high level because I think it would be some really good insight for people, right? So, if we're starting with an ARV of 550, we're generally taking out like 25% for things like, like other costs that are involved with the deal, right? There's profit that we have to take that's commensurate with the risk. So when we take out 25%, we have about 300,000 left to spend, right?
True.
So we're So like we're taking 550 minus 25%, we have 412, and we're looking at a $300,000 build. Sorry, that's what I mean. So we have about 112,000 per permitted lot, right? And so we're looking at something like 350,000 of spend across all 3 lots. Now, there's obviously demolition involved and a few other things here, but that's kind of how we got to the 280 number total, right?
Yeah, and the 280 is healthy for us because we're splitting it across 3 houses when you talk about demo, design, survey, things like that. We've got healthy, you talk about being conservative again, we have some health in there. And again, that's at 550. So if you're over 600, you got another 30,000 in cushion to do certain things.
So when we make the decision to build a little bit bigger, like this is kind of why I want to walk through it, right? If we're building a little bit bigger, it's obviously going to cost a little bit more. So if we start at like a 600 or 650, ARV for something that's like 1,400 square feet, taking out our 25%, that puts us at about 480, 490. And if it's 300 or 320 to build, or maybe even 330, right? That still puts us at about 150 and 160 of value per lot. So when we compare these two things, we're saying, okay, if we can go a little bit bigger and spend a little bit more on the build, the land is even more valuable, right?
Yeah, we found an extra 20, 30K. These ones actual build are going to be closer to 335, something like that. So for the extra 35, we're going to be closer to 625, 650 on here. So for the extra 35, we gained 75, like no brainer. Same amount of time going into the deal.
Yeah. Obviously, the way we underwrite these deals, particularly as we get into the meat of it, are more, our model is more detailed than this. We go into much more detail and we model things out. But just looking at things from what we call the back of the napkin perspective, like this is how we got to that number. And it's super reliable, especially when you approach it conservatively.
Yeah, it's how we know that, like, if they were asking 600 on this from the start, we would have just ignored it and been like, let's just wait for them to realize no one's paying them 600 for this. And we don't waste time that way, with a very efficient use of our time on the front end.
So like I said, where we're at right now is we have our financing lined up. We're expecting permits here in short order. We're getting ready to go ahead and start the construction phase. I mean, what's next? Like, what's the plan?
Yeah, we're going to get those permits shortly and build and sell these next year. If you'd like to buy one for $650,000, let us know. It's walking distance to all your favorite restaurants downtown.
Yeah.
Also, if you're a lender who has a deal you want to loan us on and thinks it works for us, please send it our way.
Yeah. I mean, what does timing look like, though? We talked about that we had a bit of a delay on the process here in terms of getting permits, especially because of the upside here. We're willing to take that risk. Did that impact the timing of our project?
Yeah, I think we probably lost 3 to 4 months, which is unfortunate. But those 3 to 4 months are more in the opportunity cost bucket because we're not levered or anything like that right now. We haven't drawn on it. Obviously, it depends on the deal. Right now, when you talk about listing in January versus listing in April, not that big of a deal, at least with the seasonality here. Versus
like April is much more beneficial. Like it's much better to list in April than it is in January.
But potentially, or more of like your drop off is September, October. So if you had to shift from July to October, that's a big no-no. So like, yeah, those extra few months aren't going to impact as much as a deal that was maybe timed differently in terms of the seasonality.
Yeah. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Bringing us to sale in April and making sure we have the right product the right way and making sure we're maximizing our profits, and limiting our risk here is much more important than losing, a month because there was something that we were kind of exploring, right? I think it was worth it and that we knew that risk going into it, and that's why we did it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And to put numbers on it, that's an extra 100K of profit for waiting an extra 3 months.
Yeah. So to kind of summarize everything, we really harp on these things over and over, right? But for us, it's location, 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 right? Like building in good neighborhoods, especially for our built to sell products, but even for our built to rent products, we're looking in like areas where land is a little bit cheaper, but still the neighborhood is promising and up and coming and things that we have a lot of faith in. We're not just picking somewhere where there's cheap land and just going, right? Using buy right development, that's our main strategy here to make sure that we can get land at a price that's not the astronomical price that you see land for available on places like Zillow and Crexy, where people have 4,000 square feet and they want to charge you $400,000 for it. It's just not something we can pay at this point in time. And then again, like making sure that our investors are not only paid first, but that they have healthy returns and they're low risk because of our conservative underwrites. So those are our 3 core tenets here. And we reiterate those, every single time and on every single deal. So if you're interested in learning more about the project or how you can invest with us on our up and coming projects, we have a lot of built to rents, but hopefully some built to sell coming soon in the pipeline. Please do connect with us. We have social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. We do have in-person events at least every single month. Our bi-weekly email. We write articles every other week about, some industry specific topic, whether it's Devin writing about properties, Sam, our chief construction officer, talking about the price of materials and the impact that world events have on that, whether it's Gabe, our broker in charge, talking about the local markets. Please join our bi-weekly email and read those, or just email us directly. We love talking to you guys.
Yeah, we'll talk about our projects, your projects, whatever, as long as it's real estate.
So next time, Trinity Park, we'll see you there.